Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening. And now, it's time!
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy P. Welsh here with UFC Fight Night Prediction and Show. Welcome in. In the live chat, it's twitch.tv/P Welsh. Link will be in the bio. Come drop by anytime and feel free to discuss anything we channel. Today we're breaking down UFC Fight Night. So leading off with Marcos and Archie Lang. Starting us off here in the bantamweight division, we have Daniel Marcos at 15-0 versus Archie Lang at 25-10. Both coming off a win in their last fight. Should be a pretty good one to start off there. Remember watching Archie Lang last? He won a decision fight. Should be in there. Daniel Marcos has a chance to start the card off strong. He's 15-0 with 8 wins by knockout, 3 in the first round. So I expect him to come and dominate the fight. This could go a little bit longer. Maybe not a finish and maybe a late round finish from Marcos, but definitely a considerable betting favorite from him. If you look at the decisions, likely to go a longer fight, but there is a chance for that KO power, especially if Lang feels desperate. Maybe later in the fight, Marcos maybe late with a finish could be definitely pretty spicy, but a good way to start off the card. Nice bantamweight division, one of the deepest in there. The betting is heavy on Marcos at -250. Might be able to get the fight over 2.5 rounds. Might be a little bit, but this one's a very heavy lean towards Marcos, so it should be a good one to start the fight off. Next, we're going to go to the featherweight division. We got Fernie Garcia versus Haider Almar. We got Garcia coming off a loss here. Amil coming in as a debut UFC fighter. You know, the debuts are always very interesting to break down and preview because you just don't know who the opponent is, what kind of experience they have, how much prep the opponent has for them as well. Some people come in UFC ready. Some people last week, like Peterson, needs a little bit more sharpening up there, who opened up the card in his debut. But some people pass with flying colors in their debut. So it's always really interesting breaking down a new debutant. We're in the featherweight division, 145, another great division. We have a lot of decisions for Garcia, a couple wins by knockout, and Harmel is a striker, I believe, in his debut. Coming in from the Philippines, 8-0 first, 4 wins by knockout. So it should be a barn burner. I don't expect this fight to go the distance. I'm leaning towards Amil. You know, somebody coming in that, a striker early in the card. You're expecting to see some fireworks. Garcia, proven not to be, have taken some L's in his career, but every fighter has, right? He kind of maybe not fights more conservatively, but he's definitely on a 3-fight decision losing streak. Garcia is. So that being said, I think I'm going to lean towards Amil and maybe him getting a finish. I know you can lean towards decision because of Garcia's past. He might not risk it too much, especially with that experience in the UFC. So it could go a little bit longer, but I'm going to lead Amil either by decision. And I think he can actually get the finish early in the fight card because that's what the UFC wants. And then we'll be just a quick transition into the light heavyweight division where we have Zach Puga versus Bogdan Gustov. And both coming off a loss. I remember Gustov, they fed to Volkan Oezdemir in one of his previous fights in his debut. One of those debuts. I'm watching them. I'm breaking them down before I'm doing this for you guys. And I'm excited about this guy. Well, maybe he can really touch, maybe he can really make some waves in the UFC. But that was one of those cases where his competition in his debut was way more advanced than what he needs. Knockout specialist looking to get a little redemption in his next match against Zach Puga. Zach holds a 7-2 record in the lightweight division. He has 2 wins by knockout, 1 first-round finish. He's had a mixed results, losing to Bukakis and Usman, Kamaro's brother, getting a win 1-2. I really like Guskov in here to come back, maybe make some waves, do some damage. Somebody coming off a loss, especially making their debut, they're going to be training extra hard. The odds on them are pretty solid. He's at plus 110. I think that's a really fair spot to see this. I could see the fight not going the distance as well. Late finish. I mean, I could see this one ending in the first round as well. Light heavyweights, expect some fireworks. Last week was not the most cracking card, but I believe in they tend to go in waves. They go up and they go down. So I really like Duskov here to make a redemption from his fight and put Puga maybe in the questionable contract area. Sorry about talk about your future professional, bro, but I'm just calling it like I see it. It's part of the fight game, and I really like that objectiveness. I like the way the champions, are very objective when they win or lose. They congratulate, especially the true champion. You've seen it with Volk and Strickland, even on losses. They, humbled and give credit to their opponents. So I think, that being part of set in the game, I really like Uskov here. I think at plus money, he's, very, very nice avenue to get his first UFC win in probably, hopefully, some stylistic fashion so we remember the name going forward there, chat. So keep that in mind. And as we move on to the next fight, we have Max Griffin versus Jeremiah Wells. And this should be a very interesting fight going back and forth. A lot of experience here in the octagon, a lot of experience. So I expect a very close fight. The welterweight division, Jeremiah Wells, 12-3. He got subbed in his last fight. I had him winning most of that fight, and then he got caught in a bad spot. Unfortunately, that happens. We see it again, time and time again. Shevchenko and Grasso, people get caught in spots and they get finished with a punch. And you just got to stay on your games. That being said, he's looking to ascend in the welterweight division, 171, facing Max Griffin, 19-10. And here's my thing about this fight. It should be very close. Max goes to a lot of decisions. He does have some stylistic finishes as well. Close loss to Morales recently. Lost to Magny recently. I lean towards Jeremiah Wells here, a little bit at a reach disadvantage. But overall, I could see this fight going to a decision. Wells is very controlled in the octagon. He's really going to manage the distance. He's probably going to be looking to check those kicks, do some damage with some jabs right up the middle, coming off a loss that he is definitely upset about. So unless he didn't take it in a downward spiral and made it into a progression, I really think Jeremiah Wells is in a nice spot here to rebound. Max Griffin, again, with a record like that, with just a lot of close fights, you can really see this one going the decision and possibly Wells' way on a good day if he's really sharp after that L. Especially, Griffin, he's the same kind of way, coming off a tough fight against Morales, who is an absolute killer, super young guy coming up. We keep an eye out for him. But another one in the welterweight division, we got a couple studs going at it, and hopefully we see a finish, man. I really want to see Wells. That's where my rooting heart is Wells to get a finish, to really propel him, kind of come back from that finish loss and move on, and hopefully see Max Griffin fight some other ones, because he's a nice fighter too. He's always laying it on the line. So excited for that fight. And we'll move on into the next light heavyweight. We have Devin Clark versus Marcin Panciano. 14-8 versus 16-7, both coming off a loss. Marcin got a little bit of a height advantage to reach, just about even. Breaking down this matchup, the odds favor Clark heavily. This is where sometimes I always get a little worried when I'm, looking into the fights and seeing the two fighters and breaking down the odds, and I'm like, okay, are they really that big of a loss? Devin Clark recently lost to my guy Kennedy's in Check You by submission. He also beat Jung and lost to Mirzakhanov by KO. So, I mean, Wells is clearly not an unbeatable minus 200 favorite against Marcin. They both take some L's on their loss there. 16-7 for Marcin. Lost to Petrino, beat Knight, and lost to Linz. Both guys not super active. This is definitely one. This is definitely more of a toss-up for me than it is a betting favorite, because somebody comes in really clean who has a good camp. I need to see if these people struggle to make weight. Last week, the opening matchup, Peterson's and Pogs. Pogs weighed almost 15 pounds heavier than his last weigh-in at heavyweight. So, there's definitely things to take in consideration as we move closer and we break down the fights a little bit more. Fighting after each and every day, something could change. Fights get scratched, people make weights, injuries happen, so things get removed all the time. This one, man, light heavyweight, you're really hoping these guys are going to put it on the line here. You're really going to hope that this fight ends in a finish one way or the other. That's where I would be leaning the fight not to go the distance. I think these guys need to, I think Pacino does have a chance to win by knockout and catch Clark. Clark's clearly not the cleanest fighter, and neither is him. So I'm going to lean just in terms of betting. I would probably just want to bet the heavy fate, the big underdog. Just they tend to pay off sometimes in these big fights. I'm just break down the card last week. We had a few minus 200 people fighters lose. So it was a very interesting breakdown, especially in the light heavyweight division. The distance. I expect these guys to keep the card moving, and I think we're gonna see a lot of exciting fights coming down on this card at the Apex. Pyfer's a fucking big name. Excuse my language. From there, I think we're gonna see a lot of finishes. We're going to move on to the women's strawweight division. We have Uma Lookboonmee versus Bruna Brasil. Breaking down, very competitive match. Huge advantage in the height department for Brazil versus Lookboonmee. He is Lookboonmee a considerable favorite, minus 278 current. And with her, very close record historically against comparably one another. Right, we have 8-3 versus 9-3 and I'm breaking down their fight history. Good lead as to why Lookboonmee a solid favorite here, and I think it's because she has a lot of good octagon control. Manage that distance even with a considerable disadvantage. It's power for her height. I think that's something that could bother Bruna Brasil. If she can get in there, bite the mouthpiece, damage, negate that length is probably why such a 4-inch reach advantage and a 5-inch on height with a leg kick, like I said, but it doesn't matter if in close against one another. Bruna Brasil doesn't seem to have that big knockout power as comparatively, right? The 1-1 in her last 2 fights, so I can see why Lookboonmee is a considerable favorite. I would like to see her finish the fight. That would be an ideal situation for a favorite this much, but women's strawweight, you never really know. These fights are always very hard to figure out what's going to happen. Always very competitive. If not, they tend not to be very uncompetitive. So women's division, like that being said, I always look to the favorite to win by decision would be Boonmee by decision, but I can see her doing some damage, getting some ground and pound, the ref stopping it, maybe getting a submission in there. Somebody of her caliber with that kind. I watched her fight before, and she does tremendous damage for somebody her size against Bruna Brasil. So that being said, that's looking like a considerable nice lean there. That being said, we'll just move on to the next fight, which is not on DraftKings betting odds. So we are going into this light heavyweight bout with not a lot of information going on there. So that being said, when I broke down Timothy Chumba, 1-0 featherweight, 24 years old, that young of a guy in the UFC versus the Zulu Warrior, 8-1, 5 knockouts, 28. I'm going Zulu Warrior here. Just I don't know much about this fight. I'm going to be quick on it. Whatever, if I can find anything. They don't even have him on the book. I don't know what's going on here. But just that age, experience in the lightweight division, I'm just going to go okay. I just think we'll just go there and move on because we have the last card of the prelims, which is Carlos Prates versus Trevin Giles. And I tell you what, we have a debut in Carlos and Trevin Giles, who is going to be in the octagon against this man, and it should be an interesting breakdown. What we see, Giles is 16-5, 6 wins by knockout, 5 by submission. Very well-rounded UFC competitor. Lost sub to Bomb Theme in the first round, middle of last year. Got a couple wins by decision, and I think this fight can be a lot closer than the odds give it as well. I got Giles at plus 210, Carlos at minus 258. Making the debut, they say listed as a pure boxer versus somebody. Giles is very well-rounded. It's going to make this fight a lot closer. The welterweight division, they're going to be able to push back if Giles can establish some range and manage the distance with some leg kicks and negate some of Prate's reach, because being a natural boxer, if he goes with jabs, hooks, crosses, combos, there's a lot that opens up in the octagon. There's another one where just because he's a big favorite making his debut could be very scary, just because I think Prates will win by decision, split decision. I think it will be very close. I would love to see him get the finish. Giles is a proven vet with a good track record behind him, wanting to make a name for himself. I don't see this fight ending in a finish. I do see it's maybe winning the first 2 rounds. Giles maybe stealing like a round with a takedown, but maybe getting outboxed for a while. Tries and go heavy in the third. Prates just holds on because he's maybe not have the gas tank, something like that. I doubt we're gonna see a finish in this, so that would be an interesting lean. For the fight to go, they have it at 1.5 rounds, so I really like the over in this. I just feel like Giles, if he's not gonna, he could try and take some shots. If he's not gonna go, he's not having success on the feet. I can't see this ending super fast. Could be completely wrong, but that being said, with the odds, to break down the debut, they like Carlos as a striker, big time against Giles, who has not been perfect, but again, this is the fight game, baby. That being said, I think this will be a highly contested fight, leading us into the card. And I'm going to leave the Prates by like a split decision. Giles turns it on late, but keeps it highly competitive. Could steal the fight. If he doesn't win by split decision, he may win by split decision, where Carlos maybe wins the 3rd round once he starts to get going, if Giles dominates. Very, very, very close fight. The odds, I said, very skewed because I think of the hype. Fighters making their debut and versus a proven octagon veteran, despite wins and losses. Putting in the training camps and the development over time that you can really see in these fights when you watch the whole card break in, week out. All right, that being said, we're heading into the main card. We have a middleweight bout. Rodolfo Vieira versus Artem Petrosyan. 9-2 versus 9-2, win and win. This is the one thing I will say about this fight. Petrosyan has 3-inch height advantage, but a reach disadvantage is all in the legs. Petrosyan has pulled out of a couple fights recently. So if he is locked in, if he is ready to go, then he is a very dangerous fighter. If he is not 100% in the game, I don't know if he has fight jitters or something. Pulled out very close to fight night recently on a couple cards. And Rodolfo Vieira coming off a win. Going to check his activity here. I'm leaning Vieira just because I like Petrosyan, but just I want to make sure he's right. Like I don't want to trust somebody that I know is pulling out on fight week, because it's not always the better fighter who wins. It's the fighter who's better that night who's going to win. And that's always something to take into consideration. It doesn't matter who you think is good over time and throughout history and have better skill set. Who's the better fighter on the night that they're fighting? And I think Vieira could be that against Petrosyan, especially like if he knows he's in his own head, not fighting. Like he knows he's pulled out of his last couple fights, right? And he's gotten ill. I think he can know that could be happening. It's wagered very evenly. You got Petrosyan at minus 102. He was at like plus 110 recently. Bet down a little bit because I think people really like his style as a fighter. But again, that being said, people bet on without thinking about it. They like his knockout record, and again, he hasn't been super active. One fight last June, a fight October 22nd, 22, and a decision lost to Bialo before that in 22. So again, one of those things, if walking out, how does he feel? Does he look a little nervous? Like he's not going to be 100% ready? I'm really liking Vieira here. I'm not saying he's going to be a finish, but I'm saying it may take a little Petrosyan to get going. Maybe he's got I don't know what's going on with him, man. hope the best version comes out of him and he puts on a great performance. We, maybe gets a third round finish. Or I think another really close fight here. I think it's going to end. And before that, again, gas tank could be a big thing for both of these men. Cutting down the weight, very, very big gentlemen. So moving on there, very close fight. The betting odds, I'm going to lean Vieira just because of Petrosian's history, not of his fight history of him not fighting. And that being said, we'll move on to the next fight with hopefully taking a win and maybe a nice finish to go out there. I'm rooting for Petrosian, man. He's kind of my guy. I've been rooting very well. We're moving on to the next fight here, ladies and gentlemen. We have Michael Johnson versus Darius Flowers. 22-19. Johnson versus 12-6. Flowers. Only a 1-inch height disadvantage. Very similar reach in the legs. We got Michael Johnson versus Darius Flowers both coming off a loss. And I don't know what to say here, ladies and gentlemen. The odds on Michael Johnson are -135. Darius Flowers is +114. That being said, somebody that gets knocked out the amount of times that Michael Johnson has knocked out, I cannot have confidence in them. I am definitely leading Darius Flowers. I know coming off a loss, he got subbed, but I just think over the course of his history, I just don't think he's taken the amount of damage as Johnson has had. I'm not saying he knocks out Johnson, but I definitely do think there could be some damage done as well. And that's the thing. If the damage gets done to Johnson, it's not reversible, right? Like you can't undo all those hits, especially if you get hit. Something starts swelling up, you get cut. I really like Flowers to keep ascending his MMA career forward at plus money. I would really love to put him and Gustav together in a nice little parlay. Have a nice little leg, just money line Flowers and Gustav from earlier. A couple guys to rebound off a loss and their UFC careers. That might be somewhere where I'm going in there. I know Flowers is also submission loss to Jake Matthews. Not super active either. I don't recall if he missed any updates or injuries with him. But again, Johnson, just with his history, just with the amount of damage, I expect him to come out strong, but I expect once there to be some exchanges, not going to be a fight. I don't expect Johnson to win by flawless victory. So that being said, I just expect the damage that has been done to him off of the number of fights in his career. I expect Flowers to come out here with the win, and this is kind of to me a passing of the torch, from generation to generation, and hopefully we can see Flowers put on a nice streak and ascend in the lightweight division. Get some good competition. Patty's always out there, man. Maybe he'll be a good fight for Patty. But I'm always leaning Flowers. Give me that plus money. And we're coming into the last few fights of the card to be very entertaining. We have a middleweight bout of Brad Tavares versus Gregory Rodriguez. And at 185, we have 20-9 Tavares versus 14-5 Rodriguez. And I don't know. The odds are leaning heavy. Rodriguez -238. Tavares +195. Tavares, I just can't get this image out of my head of him just going to sleep against Silva. And I think he's a very competitive, well-rounded fighter. But I think Rodriguez coming down to 185, the man is a monster. 6'3", and he is just a unit, can take damage. Tavares, he wrestles too. Like Tavares' win condition might be able to get some grappling in and get some and win some exchanges, get him to the ground and take down, but not against Rodriguez, man. Rodriguez is just so big. He's going to just throw in some underhooks, flip him, trip him, and then do damage. I can see ground and pound win for Rodriguez. This fight not going the distance. I don't necessarily think it ends before 2.5 rounds, 8 rounds. I think Tavares can take some punches, but I just also think he can get him in such a bad position that I can't see Rodriguez not winning this fight. I know massive favorites. Sometimes we were talking about earlier, you'll just pull the upsets. This is one of those -238 where, Rodriguez is just one of those guys that's at light heavyweight, not as scary. But when he sheds that extra 20 pounds and he can compete against these guys that are, man, he's big, fast, strong, agile, tough. I just see Rodriguez getting the W big time here against Tavares. I mean, if I'm wrong here, I'm always willing to own it. That's why I love the fight game, because you never really know what happens. But I expect Rodriguez to big time finish Tavares and keep the exciting fight night going as we move into another middleweight bout. We have Robert Brejcek versus Ayo Patoria in the middleweight. We 17-5 debut against 19-5 middleweight. Both coming off a loss, 3-inch height advantage for Patoria. We have the bettings at plus 164 for him, and Bryce Zek at minus 198, and 17-5, 11 wins by knockout, 10 first-round finishes, 33 years age from Poland, middleweight boxing style for Brejcek, and I think that's where the lean is. This is one of those debuts that doesn't scare me about Patoria. You know, he is more well-rounded, but he is not in good form. Lost to Olberg, lost to Bellato, beat Shogun Rua. Maybe not coming in off the most confidence. Somebody with clean striking could present him a lot of problems. Very hard fight to call, though. And once you get up into these middleweights, any exchanges can be the end of it. If he doesn't handle leg kicks well, you know, Patoria could have a very good game plan. You know, this is why they're in the training camps for so long. They have a lot of options. But I like Brejcek here. I'm leaning towards for sure, just because, you know, you got to like the activity coming in there. Patoria is the duelist, is his nickname, so very well-rounded. I could see him definitely dominating the fight. Could be a live dog at 165. It's really just, you know, again, it's one of those where if I had the, you know, if we're like, hey, you had to put your money down, I'd probably put it on Patoria just based on experience plus the juice. But I kind of think Brejcek could come in here pretty clean, not really seeing. So I'm very excited to see the debut. Again, really hard to handicap and really give you a good forecast when there is not much information on them. And I'm going to go watch them for the first time this Saturday when they go fight. I don't really remember too many of the duelist fights, but it should be one of the books. I think this one will not go the distance, would be somewhere where I would like to go, just because middleweight's like the scrap, man. We're going to see a lot of finishes, I feel like. There will be some decisions. We will see a couple be like, oh man, that could have been a little bit nicer. But we'll see a couple that are going absolutely enthrall the fans. So that being said, I'm gonna lean betting towards the juice, Patoria, and not to go the distance. And we're gonna move on to one of the feature fights of the evening. Andre Touchy-Feely versus Dan Ige, 17 versus 23-10. Feely coming off a knockout win of Lucas Almeida recently. It wasn't even a contest for Almeida. Huge 4-inch height advantage against Dan Ige. Coming in off some nice performances for himself as well. Ige, he has recently, he had a decision against Bryce Mitchell, win versus Landor, and KO Jackson. Very active in 2020 fights, looking good. Andre Feely came in, starched Almeida. He's been looking good in his last couple fights as well. Lost a decision to Wood. But if you can go against Bill Aguilo and win split decision, I think you're very clean. I really liked Andre Touchy-Feely. I think he's kind of hitting his stride in the zone. I think the reach advantage is just something that he's just going to eat. I don't think he finishes Ige, but I really just think Feely is just, he's going to put on a classy performance. He's going to show why he had a knockout recently, why he's going to be moving up the featherweight rankings and fighting some exciting fights here in the future, because the featherweight division is, people sleep on it because it's just been starched by Volk and Holloway, but there's a lot of good fighters in the underbelly that keep knocking each other off, and it should be a nice featherweight matchup to bring us into the main event of the evening, which is Jack Hermansson versus Joe Pyfer. Middleweight bout, 23-8 versus 12-2. Pyfer 6-2, coming in hot. Young prospect versus Jack Hermansson, the veteran. I mean, this has got to be Pyfer all day. I mean, come on. Hermansson, the thing about Hermansson is he lost to Roman, who did not look good last week, beat Curtis by decision, and lost to Strickland by decision. I think Pyfer this might go a little bit longer than the 3-4 rounds, but I think Joe wants to maybe see if he can push the gas tank, stay sharp. I think he wants to put on a nice performance. I know he wants to finish him in the first round. I think Jack will be pretty conservative, but if he can do the damage, again, we're in the apex octagon, 25-foot octagon. Not a lot of space for these big guys to get going around in there. Marquee middleweight bout. I can see possibly looking at second, third round finish for Pyfer. You know, he's a big betting favorite, minus 258. Jack Hermansson plus 210. I think there's a reason that they're that big, because I think it's Joe is just looking so electric in the octagon at middleweight. I don't know if the cut will be super hard for him. I just think my man is dialed in, and until he takes a loss in the octagon that I'm gonna watch, I'm gonna always take Joe Pyfer despite the odds. Last time he won by submission, so he did finish the fight. It's super exciting. I think it might go a little bit longer than people may expect. A third round finish. But I really have to lean Joe here. Finishing off the card, I think will be an absolute banger of a card. Doing a quick little recap at the end here. We're going to go back to the start. We got Marcos and Lang. I'm going Marcos, right? Next fight, we have Garcia, Amil. I like Amil. Next fight, we have Gustav Puga. I like Guskov. We got Wells versus Griffin. I like Wells. Devin Clark versus Perchino. I'm going to go Perchino. Luke Boomy, Brazil. Luke Boomy, damage. Oki. I'm going Oki here. Giles, Prates. We're going to go Prates. Decision. Petrosian, Vieira. I like Vieira. Give me Flowers. Rodriguez. Toss. Close fight, toss-up. Pretoria on experience. Feely from Reach. I'm going Joe Pyfer. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Like, subscribe, comment if you enjoyed it. Tell me who your favorite fighter is. What do you see for UFC 300 as the main event? And I look forward to having you guys back here next week. It's your boy P. Welsh signing out here at UFC Vegas. Look forward to you on Saturday. Peace and love, everybody.